So we're going to talk about brotherhood or biblical friendship, and I have a lot of texts to look at, but I'll begin with a definition. So what do I mean by biblical friendship? This is what I mean. Biblical friendship is a deep bond rooted in love and faithfulness. Proverbs 17:17. Willing to sacrificially support and encourage one another. 1 Samuel 18:3-4. In a relationship that reflects the love of Christ. John 15:13. So, a deep bond rooted in love and faithfulness, willing to sacrifice and support and encourage one another in a relationship that reflects the love of Christ. That's what biblical friendship is. That's what we're looking at here. And in the book of Proverbs, let me pull my notes up here. In the book of Proverbs, verse 17, we encountered this simple and profound truth. And let me read the text for you. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. That is such a blessed truth. Now think with me, this brother being born. As Solomon is writing here, let's say, I don't know if it's Solomon, maybe Solomon. Solomon is writing here. What do you think he has in mind when he uses that word born? Yeah, that's an interactive. A brother is born for adversity.
That's what he's meant to do. He's born for that purpose.
Yeah, very similar. He was God ordained that.
So let me ask you. So do you think he's talking about somebody being physically born, like coming out of the birth canal and dropping out and being caught?
Like he's created for it. Like it's his very nature.
Yeah, that's right. Now, yes.
I was thinking like certain situations could cause that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
Yeah. That need for the brother, you mean? Yeah. Like he's born, he's created. I loved how you said that. Say it one more time, brother.
He's created for it. Like it's built in his very nature.
Yeah. Our purpose, one of our grand and chief purposes, brothers, is for us to help one another in adversity. That's what we're born for. I'm going to read from the 1689. On the communion of the saints. This is paragraph 2. Saints by profession are bound to maintain a holy fellowship and communion in the worship of God. So we must do that. We ought to gather together as a public witness that Christ has redeemed us by his death. He has raised us to newness of life by his resurrection, and he is one day going to return to judge the living and the dead. Amen. When you're driving to church on Sunday, and when you park in the parking lot, and when you go into worship, and you have your seats, that is what that congregation is doing. It's a public witness. And we ought to do that. And we ought to do it with the goal of worshiping the true and living God. But listen to what's added. In performing such other spiritual services as tend to their mutual edification. So we have a responsibility not only to gather together to worship corporately, but to spiritually edify one another in the various ways that can happen. As also in relieving each other in outward things according to their several abilities and necessities. This is pretty comprehensive. Because God is not just saying, I want you to get together and worship me on Sunday. But he's also saying, I want you to care and be concerned for the spiritual good of those you gather with to worship. And let me take it a step further. I want you to make sure that they're physically well also.
Amen.
And of course, according to their several abilities, right, and necessities, which communion, according to the rule of the gospel, though especially to be exercised by them in the relationship wherein they stand, whether in families or churches, yet as God offers opportunity, it is to be extended to all the household of faith. So, of course, it's expanded. It's not just those who are closest to us. But as I said, I think this morning or sometime during this conference, we love our brothers and sisters who are suffering, who are being persecuted, they are really dying for the gospel in other parts of the world, and we should pray for them and do whatever we can, right, to be an aid to them. But unfortunately, we will never know those brothers and sisters the way that you know the person who's sitting next to you in the pew or in the seat or standing. You're never going to know them that way. Not in this life anyways. Yeah. So the people who are around us, they are going to take up the bulk of our consideration and the bulk of our action when it comes to biblical friendship. And now, of course, we're turning our attention particularly to men. So what are some of the characteristics of a biblical friendship? What characterizes biblical friendship? I'll start. Loyalty and trustworthiness. And I'm going to take you to a text so you guys can think, right? Loyalty and trustworthiness. This is Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 24. A man who has friends must himself be friendly. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. If I want to keep this relationship going, what must I do? I need to interact with you as a friend. Let's make it practical, right? You shouldn't be the only person texting me. Right? It shouldn't just be this one-way thing, or you're constantly... Now, sometimes I got to track a brother down. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a problem texting you until you disconnect the phone number. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'm not so... Right? Sometimes you got to hunt guys down, and do it. Mm-hmm. If you love them, you're going to do it. But the relationships should be reciprocal, right? There should be this exchange where I'm opening up, you're opening up, and however that may look. Let me finish the verse. Verse 24. But there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Why do you think that but is there? But there is a friend. So if I'm friendly, if I want to have friends, I need to be friendly, but there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother.
Is it contrast?
There is a contrast of sorts.
I think it's like what you were saying earlier about, like, James, John, Peter. Like, there's just it goes beyond a certain level.
Yeah.
Okay, we're friendly with each other. We can, have a casual chat and get along. But there's much greater depth of relationship.
Yes,
there.
and also, when you're not friendly to me, I'm going to be friendly to you anyways. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You see the contrast here, brother?
Yeah, you said, loyalty, I thought long-suffering.
That's right.
Times in that friendship.
Yeah, and so we go back to the virtue of fortitude, right? Where there's this courage. It takes courage to be a good friend. Mm-hmm. It really does. Because what's going to happen is your closest friends, you're going to see stuff in their life that, and not always that it's you become friends with a guy and you find out all of these horrible things. That's not my point, brothers. That's not what I'm saying. But you're going to see things in his life that are not consistent with his profession as a Christian. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take some courage on your part and some long suffering, but first courage to go to that brother. Because what are you going to think? Man, if I begin to go down this road with this brother, what's going to happen is he's not going to be my friend anymore. And I value the friendship, so I'm going to compromise it. It's kind of how we think, right? I value it so much, I'll compromise it, I won't say anything. So it takes courage. Yes, brother.
The wounds of a friend are sweeter than the kisses of an enemy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. So it takes courage, but then it also takes long suffering, because you could go to that brother and say, "Hey, brother, this, that, the third," and now you have to be willing to bear with that brother as repentance comes, or maybe clarity, or maybe even on your part, maybe you saw things wrongly, right? But you have to be willing now. This is my friend. This is my brother. I'm willing to engage with him in this way because I love him. You don't. If one of your friends is making a complete fool of himself and discrediting the gospel, you are no brother to that man if you don't say something. And let him get angry. Good. It's better than not saying anything. Brothers, you must. So, loyalty and trustworthiness, right? So, for it to come with some force, the guy's got to trust you, which it takes time, long suffering, developing a relationship at distance or at close, however that may look, as your lives change, right? And that is one of the biggest obstacles, because as your life changes, you get married, you have kids, you change careers, and just things happen. It could sort of drown out these relationships that you need. So it's very important for us to develop loyalty, trust for one another. What else? So characteristics: loyalty, trust. Proverbs 18:24. What else? Patience. We talked about long suffering, right? Same thing. Patience, long suffering, right? We need that. What else? Initiative. Elaborate.
Just to start a conversation or look, like you mentioned.
Okay, so a willingness to engage with a person. How about encouragement and accountability? We live in a fallen world, and we're fallen people. We need encouragement. We need to encourage one another. We need to lift one another up. We also need to be accountable to one another. Look at Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friends. I am more theologically astute and assured of my positions because of arguments I had with Tom Matugi. If you know, you know. All right? But that iron sharpening iron, right? Having, right, and we could keep it at the theological level, but of course look at it at the practical level, right? You make some theological statement, and you've got a brother who he knows his Bible, he's courageous, he's willing to long suffer with you. What's he going to do? Yeah, I think you're wrong. Have you ever thought about this and that and this over here and this, and right? And if you're able to take that with some humility and see it as encouragement and allow it to strengthen you, you don't necessarily, you could grow. And even on a practical level, right? Like if a brother comes to you, and this is a brother from afar, right? But I remember going through Al Martin's pastoral theology lectures, and it's a bunch of, maybe it's a lot of information and a lot of class hours sitting. But at the very beginning, there's this section where he talks about the man of God, and he's speaking particularly about self-control, and he's speaking to pastors, and he says to them, this is not verbatim, but this is what he conveyed, and it hit me. He said, brothers, how are you going to talk to the young men in your church about self-control when your belly is hanging over your belt? That's verbatim. He said it just like that. When your belly is hanging over your belt. I just remember that. That became a pebble in my shoe because my belly used to hang over my belt. And now, yes, medical conditions, but yeah, I want to be sensitive. But for most guys who are big, you're big because you eat a lot. I was big. I'll show you pictures. Guys know. I was a big dude, right? And I'm not doing it like riding a hobby horse because I'm thin now. I'm not doing that. But that's a hard conversation to have, because if we're all sitting around the table and we're being gluttons, not just feasting. We feast, we laugh, we enjoy ourselves. But if you notice a brother being a glutton, there's a tendency on our part not to say anything to him. That's an acceptable sin. Very respectable in the United States. Right? So much so that there's probably a couple of you guys who are like, man, I don't like listening to this dude. He's just really harsh. He's a judgmental guy. That's okay. I'm willing for you to feel that way about me, to tell you the truth. I'm going to sleep okay tonight too. Don't worry. I'll be just fine. I'm going to lay down, confess all of my sins to the Lord, sins of commission, sins of omission, run through the 10 Commandments, lay it all on Christ, and go to bed. So I don't mean to offend you, but we need to encourage one another, and we need to be accountable to one another. There ought to be brothers who know your business, right? And just like, right, Peter, James, John, right? Not everybody has to know all of your business. That's not even appropriate. But there ought to be brothers who are close with you, who you can call and you can say to them, brother, I'm struggling with this thing again, and I'm having a really hard time. Please pray for me. Right? You need to have guys like that. You need to have guys that if you pick up the phone and say, I need your help, they're going to drop whatever they need to drop. They're going to come. We need that. We need that kind of accountability. We need that kind of encouragement. Paul sought it with Timothy. He wanted him to come, right? 2 Timothy, right at the very end, he's inviting him, come to see me before winter. Yeah, and he had needs, but he wanted to see his son before he died. He knew he was dying. He was going to be killed. So we need encouragement and accountability. What else? What else ought? I need to try to give you some. What should we be doing for one another? What are some things we should be doing for one another?
Pray.
That's right. Where would we go in our Bibles? Where in our Bibles does it say, pray for one another?
It says pray for all men.
Pray for all men, yeah. And that's in the context of the local church and his view, and I think it's a very helpful view, particularly now, when people are really angry about Christian nationalism. We ought to be praying for governmental figures. But that's kind of the idea he has in Timothy, but something a little closer to home. Can anybody, any verse? James 5 what? That's it. James 5:16. Would somebody find that and read it really loud for us? James 5 and verse 16.
Confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The effective fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much.
Keep reading. Keep reading a little more.
It says, is that 15?
17.
Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth produced its fruit.
So, what's important here, the thing with Elijah is this, is not that God answered his prayer, is that he persisted in praying. And that is the kind of engagement that he's talking about here. He's not just talking about, this almost really immature thing that we do. Hey, brother, how can I pray for you? He's talking to you. You're texting, all right, brother, I'll pray for you. And you don't ever pray for him. He's not talking about that. He's talking about really knowing your brother's concerns and bringing them before the Lord. And God doesn't answer, so you know what I'm going to do? My brother needs this. I'm going to bring it back before the Lord. And many, we're Calvinistic, right? All of us here. But many of the times that, we're frustrated in prayer and the Lord is not answering our prayers, we should think to ourselves, how many more voices are ascending to the Father for this for me? Can I recruit anybody else to pray for me? Are there some brothers who I can trust and say to them, brothers, I really would love a wife. Can you pray for me? I've been praying and I'm prepared and I've, doing my due diligence as best as I can. And I would just love to have a Christian wife to just pour myself into. Can you pray with me? that God would give that to me. I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe it says something about me, but I've not had a young man do that to me. Come to me and ask me that. And maybe it says something about me and my relationship to young men. But we should be praying for one another. We should be doing it fervently. We should be continually and incessantly, as we do for ourselves, going before the throne of grace, praying for one another when we have needs. And there should be brothers that you have that you know, if I say to him, I need pray for me, I need wisdom, counsel, assistance, you're going to get it. And if he doesn't have it, he'll go find it for you. Or you're going to find it together. You need a Samwise, in other words. Yeah. So we need to pray for one another. So we're just talking about characteristics here, right? Loyalty, trustworthiness, encouragement, accountability. We pray for one another. We also need to practice selflessness and humility. We ought to be selfless. We ought not to consider ourselves first in our relationships with our brothers. We ought to consider them. And we ought to be willing to give of ourselves. I mean, which apostle just exemplifies this for us? Paul. I mean, he just exemplifies this. His selflessness. Paul can speak in ways where he says things like this. Paul can talk this way. And he can do it with honesty. He can say, and this is in Philippians. I don't remember the address, but I know where it is in my Bible. He says, in chapter 1, verse 29, he says, "For to you it has been granted on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for his sake, having the same affliction which you saw in me and now here is in me." He says it a bit of it, and this is what I have in mind, also to suffer for his sake. He's talking about suffering for the sake of Christ. And then in Colossians, he says it this way. And I don't know the address there, but I know where it is in my Bible. He writes, no, I don't know where it is in my Bible. He says, he says that he enters into the sufferings of Christ for your sake. Where's the text? Brothers, help me. Let's see. It's in Colossians. No worries. Selflessness and humility. Look at Philippians 2, 3 and 4. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. How do you do that? How do you look at? Let's take a. How do you do that in the context of a local church, a congregation? Can I get a paper towel? I left my. Can I get a paper towel? Throw me John. Yeah, thank you. Yes, brother.
Well, you find out a brother has a need, or he's struggling as a husband with his wife.
Yep.
And you know him a little bit better, you know some other brother, and maybe there's another brother that can come alongside and you can help, encourage him, take him to the scriptures, say what the Lord says, you know, how you should handle this. Just letting him know that anything you need, I'm there for you. You know, anytime that they call me, you know, I'll come by, like you said, come see you, I'll be there.
Got it. So affirming your loyalty, assuring them that you're willing to encourage, you want to hold them accountable, you want to pray for them, right? Assuring them of those things. Yeah. Somebody else had their hand up. Yeah, brother.
I'd say sometimes you've labored and long suffered with the brother for a long period of time, and you just, man, like, I just don't want to deal with this anymore, right? But
No.
you have to press through that and forget about yourself and think about that.
Yeah. This is adversity. And this is my brother. I was born for this.
Yeah.
It may be a heavy burden that I do not want to bear. But I was born for this adversity. I'm going to help this brother. Right?
Yeah, another one, that all of this would have to be guarded with would be Proverbs 11, I believe it's 13. One who goes about as a slanderer reveals secrets. The one who is trustworthy conceals a matter.
Yeah.
I've seen people be there for you, tell me anything, talk to me about anything, and you pour your heart out, and and then they get upset with you, or something happens, and then they
It's on Facebook.
and we think that
It's a video.
that's just women.
Yeah.
But
No.
it's
No.
not just women. They want a girlfriend. They tell something, whatever the case might compete for the same girl. I've seen all kinds of stuff where people just, if I can't trust you, then even if we go separate ways, what I've said to you goes to the grave.
Yeah.
What you said to me goes to the grave.
Yeah.
That's being a man.
Yeah. Think of Barnabas and Paul. They have their split. And they go both ways. And Paul never puts anything in any of his epistles. Don't say hi to Barnabas, right? And don't say hi to Barnabas, right? He didn't do that, right? Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, brother. Thank you very much. And that was Proverbs 11, Proverbs 11:13, right? That's just a vital aspect of trustworthiness, right? I've got to be able to, if I'm, and now it's not that a pastor is special, but right, because people think that pastors don't struggle with stuff, which is weird. But they think now. Granted, a pastor there ought to be a level of spiritual maturity and wisdom, not just intellect, but wisdom, the ability to apply the things that he's talking about, right? But he's not sinless. So maybe for those who are pastors here, and for those of you brothers who are close to pastors and have a relationship with a pastor where you can count him, he's not just my pastor, but he's my friend. He needs to be able to trust you. Because I'm certain there are things that he has not told you, because he's not sure he can trust you.
We're sheep too.
We need it. And that's why a plurality and parity is essential for a healthy church. If you have anything else besides a plurality and parity, there's going to be problems. There's going to be problems.
I'm not familiar with the term parity. Can you define that? So
plurality, multiple, right?
Yeah.
Parity is we're equal. I'm not the head chief pastor, right? I remember Sam Waldron in his lectures on ecclesiology, he calls it monarchical bishopry, right? This dude is essentially a monarch, and he's a bishop of a church, and he rules. That's not the place of a pastor, but that's ecclesiology stuff. I'm just saying. I'm talking about the necessity. The necessity of those of you who are friends with pastors, so this is maybe an aside speaking because there are pastors here, they need to be able to trust you. They've got to be able to say things to you, because I'm certain, I'm a pastor, I'm speaking from, there are things that your pastor struggles with by himself. So we need to be able to trust you, right?
One of the things that we say is, who pastors the pastor?
That's right.
And it kind of speaks to that need of just being able to be vulnerable with other people.
That's right. And for us pastors, we have to be willing then, right, to be loyal, trustworthy ourselves, to encourage others, to be accountable. Right? Pastors, we have to be willing to be accountable to our brothers. If our brothers begin to come to us and they're close and they're telling me things about my conduct, whether in private or in public, I need to listen. I need to be willing to be accountable. I can't take the posture or the position of saying to my brothers, no. No. Even if I think the guy's off base, the safest thing I can do is listen, pump my brakes. If this brother, if this fellow who's my friend,
Then you know I value their opinion.
yeah, that's right. If he's my friend and he's coming to me, it's going to take a bit of courage. One, because I'm his pastor. So he's coming to me and he's addressing these issues with me, whether small or great. I need to pump my, and even if the guy's wrong, let's say he brings up an issue and you're like, oh, I've got his answer. He's off here. That's not correct. But I'm going to just shut up and listen. I'm going to thank him. I'm going to go back and even consider to myself, man, this guy's my really close friend. What did I do to cause him to think that way? I've got to fix that. Right? Because I don't want him even to think about me that way. So let me redress the issue. Let me go back. Let me, do what I need to do due diligence. We have to be willing to be accountable, brothers, those of us who are pastors. So, now what else? We haven't touched this one. Yeah, brother, go ahead.
For the needs of the saints, so maintain the hands,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
feet,
yeah.
there's physical needs that the brethren have, you're able to help them.
And that's right. So meeting each other's physical needs. But there's something else. Nobody's brought it up yet. Starts with an F. Begins with a 4, ends with a giveness. We need to be able to forgive one another and to reconcile. Your brothers are going to sin against you. Your wife's going to sin against you. Your kids are going to sin against you. Your brothers are going to sin against you. They are. It's going to happen. The closest ones, and it's going to feel so horrible. You're just going to be so shocked that this guy could sin against you. But when you sin against him, you're going to expect him to forgive you on the drop of a dime. You need to set your disposition where you say to yourself, I'm going to forgive this brother. I am, and if he's a Christian, and and I don't mean dropping issues. Look, there are certain things that a brother may do, and I'm going to allow love to cover some of those things, right? I'm just going to allow love to cover it. But there may come a time where I have to address an issue, and let's say he handles it as a Christian man ought to. Once he has confessed genuinely his sin to the Lord, he is forgiven. I don't need to hold it against him anymore. What I need to do is I need to be able to forgive that brother, to let it go. I'm not going to bring it back up. I'm going to ensure that my thought of that sin is as far as the east is from the west, forgotten. And then I have to be willing to reconcile, right? I want to build that relationship back up, because now not only have we, let's say, labored together and been accountable together, but now we've gone through a major issue. That's going to be even a greater friendship, right? So we must be willing to forgive and to reconcile with one another. Colossians 3:13. Colossians 3:13. Huh? Yeah.
His grace.
Yes, that's right, man. Unmerited, completely unmerited. I do not deserve. I do not deserve for God to force you to treat me this way. Right? I don't deserve that. I do not deserve, because God commands you to do it. You know that, right? You're being disobedient if you don't do these things for me. Right? If I'm your brother.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. Because I do not deserve it. I did not do anything to earn it. And if it was based upon my own merit, I should lose it. I'd lose it every day. I would lose your friendship. I would lose your trust. I would lose all confidence that you even care for me if it was up to me to keep it. But Jesus bought that for me. You were reborn. You were born again to deal with the adversity that would come being my friend. Christ has given you new life for that. We are a new people. I don't deserve that. We do not deserve to have friends like that. But God gives them to us. along with all of the other graces that accompany salvation, right? Christ calls us his friends, and then he gives us all of these friends. So we do not deserve it. Forgiveness and reconciliation. Now, there are tons of examples, right, of biblical friendship in the Bible. David and Jonathan are that's probably one of the sweetest. The texts are in 1 Samuel 18, 1 through 4, and 1 Samuel 20, 17. But you consider, Jonathan was loyal to David despite his father's enmity towards David. Despite the fact that he would never be king. Jonathan would never be king because of David. But their friendship helped him overcome that. He wasn't jealous for David in any way. He did whatever he could to support, to affirm his friend. He was selfless. He was humble. He encouraged him. He gave David accountability. He was loyal. He was trustworthy. All of those things. And there are many other examples in Scripture. We could look to Jesus, of course, who is the pinnacle. His compassionate love and servant leadership for his disciples is absolutely undeniable. And think of that. Think of the context there where Lazarus dies. So he gets the news. Lazarus is dead. And Jesus, this is in John 11. And Jesus weeps. And, commentators, they don't seem to be as mixed on this. But it appears that Jesus was not weeping out of emotion. My buddy died. That's not the language that's used there. He is angry because of the power that death has exercised over his friend. And the mourning and the weeping and the hopelessness. So he sees his friend in this. So it's not just the death, but just the entire context. Why everybody's weeping for him, and death has conquered him. And he groans and he weeps in frustration. And when we see our brothers struggling with sin, they go wayward. They begin to destroy their marriages, and there should be a holy grief in our heart. No, Lord. No, not this brother. Please. We ought to plead with God for our brothers. Just an excellent example. And then, of course, his dying for us. Right? Greater love has no man than this. Right? And we were his enemies. When he says friends, I think he's talking to the 11. Because we weren't his friends yet. We were his enemies. And that's the way that Paul picks it up in Romans. So the love that he has displayed for us, it's a death that conquers, yes, but it even conquers our enmity. His death reconciles us back to God, restores us, restores our fellowship, and then brings us into this wonderful fellowship. Some of the benefits of biblical friendship, of course, emotional support. Proverbs 27:9, spiritual growth. Ecclesiastes 4:9 through 10, strength in unity. So, right, if the first church that was planted out of Cornerstone Baptist Church was in Guatemala, and how did we plant that thing? Like on a shoestring. And it took us 8 years or more, really, till Mark got there. Now he's been there 8 years, right? Something like that. But man, we did that on a shoestring. During the summer, basically, we would send groups of essentially kids to the city of Guatemala to do open-air preaching. We had no place to stay. They would stay in hostels, and because of the camaraderie, because of the fellowship, because of the strength in unity, there's a really wonderful church there now. I mean, what? Yeah. And that was the strength of unity, brothers. Right? And that was on a shoestring. We had nothing. But the Lord provided all the way and continues to. It's wonderful. So strength and unity, shared joy and sorrow. Right? We need to rejoice when it's time to rejoice, and we need to be able to weep with one another when it's time to weep. This is one of the benefits of biblical friendship, that you could have a brother there, and you don't have to talk. Right? And I don't got to say nothing. I know. Right? So, seek godly friends, brothers. Look, seek them. Look out for them. Search for them. Find them wherever you can. Right? But particularly in your own congregation, you need to find godly friends. Be intentional in cultivating relationships. I try to advise my sons in this way when they're making friends, like be generous. Be generous with your time. Be generous with your talents. Be generous with your skills. Right? With whatever you have, you be generous. Why? Because you love this person. Right? And what you want to do is you want to cultivate a relationship, and generosity, an openness, liberality, right? Open arms. They invite people. That's how people begin to trust you. They begin to love you, right? When they know, your home should be as much as possible open, so that folks can come and just be there. We've had it, I remember we lived in this little apartment in Oviedo. Some of you remember this. And it was a 3-bedroom, just little thing. And we would have open fellowships almost every Sunday. And there were like 40 kids in this 3-bedroom apartment. People are sitting on the floor eating hot dogs from paper plates and Little Caesar pizza. Amen. Right? That's how we did it. We ain't have nothing. I'm a pastor. I still don't have anything. But that helped us cultivate some of the best friendships that we've had. But we saw that pattern in others where people would do that for us. More mature Christians. They just opened their home to us. When me and my wife just were first converted and had no idea how to do anything. We were married for 1 year and we would have been divorced in a couple months if we didn't get converted. Because we were just stupid kids. Lost in this world. And people opened their homes to us, their lives to us, and that liberality helped establish trust, and we were won over. We were really won over. And so be intentional in cultivating relationships. Put others' needs before our own. Be quick to forgive and reconcile. Quick, fast. Brother, forgive me. You got it. I'm not. Yeah, but I was really, really mad with it. He asked you to forgive him. What else do you want? Draw blood? All right? No. Forgive your brothers. So, that's all I got for you guys. Yes. But I don't mind interacting here.
Everything you share is great. This is a testimony to the church.
Yeah.
Man, and it's also testimony outside the church.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, I know when I go evangelize people, people are hypocrites in church because they act one way in church, and then when they're outside, they act like the world. Uh-huh. So, being a man and all those qualities reflects, and it'll shine on the other men there. And, my prayer is it'll also share it in the community that come in to visit the church for the first time, and they see this bond between these men, how they treat each other, how they treat their families, how they see that they're simple men, but yet they're willing to give up for one another, to serve one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing, and it's really beautiful too when it's men of from all different places and all different races and all different vocations, and it's just this wonderful, just mixture of men, older men, younger men, sons. To see that is really beautiful. And then cultivating those relationships in that context, man, I love that my kids have friends in Florida that they keep in contact with, you know. And why do they have those friends? Well, their parents are our friends. So what have we done? The multi-generational friendships. That's what we've baked into our church. Yes, brother?
Also fellowship in the gospel.
Amen.
In evangelism.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Brothers
I mean, yeah, that's our, right, that is, in the context of the local church, we have all of these benefits and all of these things that we must do, but we must also be a public witness, right? To our brother's point, Sixto, the world will see the way that we love each other and say, truly, they are, you know, these are Christ's disciples. But on the other hand, too, in that camaraderie and in that fellowship, part of the labor that we ought to be taking upon ourselves is the work of evangelism, preaching the gospel, right? And you could do that in a variety of ways. You could go out to parks, you could go out and knock on doors, however you decide to do it. But that is a vital part of the fellowship that we have in Christ. I remember, I used to go witnessing with this fellow. I went witnessing for years with him. And he would give me advice on what kind of career, what should you do for a living. We're sitting in his car. We just finished witnessing to somebody. We're sitting in his car, turn the AC on, put seatbelts on. And he said, brother, have you ever thought about becoming a pastor? And I said, no, I didn't. He said, maybe you should. I'm a pastor now. Right? And that happened in the context of just doing the work together, is what I'm saying, right? We were doing the work. We were just going out, talking to unconverted people. When we were free, we had the extra time, right? And laboring together that way, getting to know each other, talking about different things. Well, hey, maybe you should be a pastor, right?
I would say that persecution brings you together too.
Oh, absolutely, right? That's adversity. Adversity, right? Your brother's going through a hard spot. That adversity, why? Because you're praying for him. This dude is on time. I'm worried about him. I want him to do good. And it might not even be bad worried. He's courting this young lady. Oh, man, and we've had her over. She's really sweet. He's met her parents, and they're just great. I'm praying for this dude. Man, I hope that this works out. I hope the father really sees the virtue in this young man. Maybe you might put in an ad, run into her dad somewhere and talk, whatever you need to do, But when you're involved that way in people's lives, it's difficult not to care for them, Yeah. And adversities come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So it could be difficulty with financial difficulties, health difficulties, assistance with being a dad, or maybe dealing with some issue at work or with family. But they're in your prayers, they're in your thoughts, and you're pouring into them and loving them. Yeah. It's difficult to stop loving people when that is the kind of relationship that you have. It's difficult not to be concerned. Like when the guy doesn't show up a couple weeks to church. Right? And you call and he doesn't pick up, but we're going to his house.
One thing I thought about that I'm having to running into more now that I'm getting older, that I'm losing friends, brothers. And David had a good memory. And he said, is there anyone of Jonathan's household?
Yeah. Mephibosheth.
Right.
Yeah, he finds Mephibosheth.
Sometimes we have short memories. And there are people who've done a lot of things for us in our lives, older brothers, and they pass on and move on. They have children, they have family love. Maybe they're struggling financially, a kid trying to go to college. A person doesn't have to be alive for you to be a good brother to them. Nothing wrong with stopping by his house and cutting the widow's grass, or helping take the son up to college, and sending him somebody, a broke college student, helping them get books, whatever. You gotta think in an eternal sense. That's still my brother, wherever he is. Hopefully with Lord. My brother.
Yeah, that's right. Of course. Yes.
And we still have a commitment. We're just separated for a while.
Yeah. We'll be back.
Yeah, I should love
we'll get up again, and I won't be bald.
I'm having to think about that. That's what I'm saying, right? I'm having to think about that. I never used to think about that.
Yeah.
And I'm coming to situations now where I've had to consider that.
Yeah. Important stuff to think about, because this is, it truly is our fellowship we're brought up into the eternal places on Sunday when we gather together corporately, but our fellowship is going to extend into eternity. Like, we're going to bump into each other's, right? And the new heavens and the new earth. Right? And we ought to think that way. That long view. That's just a beautiful expression of love on David's part. Is there anybody? Is there anybody from his house that I can love? All right, you're going to eat at my table. And he was crippled and lame. Mephibosheth could do nothing for himself. And David said, I'm going to care for him. Why? Because he loved Mephibosheth? He loved Jonathan. He loved Jonathan. That was his brother. He loved him. So, yeah, wonderful illustration. Okay, let's pray. I'll keep talking.